The afternoon started like any other. The sun was bright but not too hot, and the air felt calm. People moved in and out of a busy shopping area, carrying bags, talking on phones, laughing with friends. Cars pulled in and out of parking spaces, engines humming softly. It was the kind of place where nothing unusual ever seemed to happen. A young black girl walked across the parking lot with steady steps. She looked relaxed, wearing simple clothes and carrying herself with quiet confidence. She held a set of car keys in her hand, swinging them slightly as she walked. To her, this was just another normal day. She had finished what she came to do and was ready to head home. She stopped beside a clean, well-kept car. It stood out a little, not because it was flashy, but because it was clearly taken care of. She pressed the button on her keys, and the car lights blinked. She reached for the door handle, unaware that someone nearby was already watching her closely. A few parking spaces away, a bully leaned against another car. They had been standing there for a while, scrolling on their phone, bored and irritated. When they noticed the girl by the car, their eyes narrowed. Something about the scene bothered them, though they couldn't explain why. They watched her movements closely, their expression turning judgmental. First, the bully said nothing. They just stared, studying the girl from head to toe. The girl opened the car door slightly, placing her bag inside. As she did, she felt that familiar sensation of being watched. She glanced around, her eyes briefly meeting the bully's. The look she received made her uncomfortable, but she brushed it off. She had learned not to react to every stare. She closed the door and leaned against the car for a moment, checking a message on her phone. That was when the bully decided to speak. "Hey!" they called out loudly, their voice cutting through the parking lot noise. The girl looked up, surprised. She pointed to herself for a second, unsure if the comment was meant for her. The bully pushed away from the car they were leaning on and took a few steps closer. "Yeah, you," the bully said, their tone sharp. "Whose car is that?" The question caught the girl off guard. She felt her stomach tighten but kept her face calm. "It's my family's car," she replied simply. The bully let out a short laugh that didn't sound friendly at all. "Your family's car?" they repeated, louder this time, as if inviting others to listen. "You really expect people to believe that?" A couple of nearby shoppers slowed down, curious about the raised voices. The girl noticed them but stayed focused on the bully. "Yes," she said again, keeping her voice even. "Is there a problem?" The bully crossed their arms, shaking their head. "I've seen this before," they said. "People hanging around cars that don't belong to them, trying to act like they own something they clearly don't." The words stung. The girl felt heat rise to her face, but she refused to let it show. "I'm not doing anything wrong," she said. "Please leave me alone." Instead of backing off, the bully stepped closer. "If that's really your car," they said, "prove it." "I don't need to prove anything to you," the girl replied softly. That answer seemed to irritate the bully even more. Their voice grew louder, more aggressive. "See? That's exactly what someone would say if they were lying. You probably don't even know who owns it." The girl's hands tightened around her phone. She took a slow breath, trying to stay calm. "I'm just trying to leave," she said. "Please stop." But the bully wasn't interested in stopping. They glanced around again, noticing that a few more people had begun watching. That seemed to give them confidence. "So tell me," the bully said loudly, "whose car did you steal?" The words hit hard. A sharp silence followed, broken only by the distant sound of a car horn. The girl felt her heart race. She shook her head immediately. "I didn't steal anything," she said, her voice slightly trembling now. The bully scoffed. "Sure you didn't," they replied. "You just expect everyone to believe you?" Some people nearby exchanged uncomfortable looks. A few whispered to each other. No one stepped in. The girl felt small in that moment, standing there with strangers watching her as if she were guilty of something terrible. She swallowed hard, reminding herself to stay composed. "I have the keys," she said, lifting her hand slightly. "The car opened when I pressed the button." "That doesn't mean anything," the bully shot back. "Keys can be stolen too." The girl didn't know what else to say. Every answer she gave seemed to make things worse. She wished she had just driven away sooner. But now, walking away felt impossible. The bully pulled out their phone, their movements quick and confident. "You know what?" they said. "I'm calling the cops. Let them sort this out." The girl's eyes widened. "That's not necessary," she said quickly. "I haven't done anything." The bully ignored her, already tapping on their screen. "Hello," they said into the phone, loud enough for everyone to hear. "Yes. I'd like to report a suspicious person. I think someone is trying to steal a car." The girl felt a knot form in her chest. She looked around, hoping someone would speak up, but most people avoided her eyes. A few looked at her with doubt. That hurt more than the bully's words. As the bully continued speaking to the dispatcher, the girl stepped back against the car, feeling trapped. She had never been in a situation like this before. Her thoughts raced. She knew she was innocent, but fear crept in anyway. When the bully ended the call, they smirked. "Police are on their way," they said. "We'll see what they have to say about this." The girl nodded slowly, her throat tight. She reached for her phone again, her fingers shaking slightly as she scrolled through her contacts. After a second, she pressed a number she knew by heart. When the call connected, she spoke quietly. "I need you to come here," she said. "Someone called the police on me. I didn't do anything wrong, but I'm scared." She listened, then nodded. "Yes, I'll wait." She ended the call and looked up. The bully noticed her phone and laughed. "Calling for backup?" they asked. "Let me guess, some story to get yourself out of trouble." The girl didn't respond. She stared at the ground, focusing on her breathing. Around her, the parking lot felt different now. Heavier, tense. People continued to come and go, but the small group nearby stayed, drawn by the drama. Minutes passed slowly. Each one felt longer than the last. The girl leaned against the car, feeling its solid presence behind her, reminding herself that the truth was on her side. She didn't know what would happen next, but she knew one thing for sure. This was no longer just a normal day, and whatever was coming, it would change everything. The waiting felt endless. The girl stood by the car, her back lightly touching the door, as if it were the only solid thing keeping her steady. Her eyes moved around the parking lot, not because she expected help, but because staying still made her thoughts race too fast. Every sound felt louder now. Footsteps, car doors slamming, distant voices. The bully stood a few steps away, clearly enjoying the attention. They kept glancing at their phone, then at the girl, then at the small group of people who had gathered nearby. Their body language was relaxed, almost proud, like they had done something important. "You should have just admitted it," the bully said casually, breaking the silence. "Would have made this easier." The girl looked up slowly. "Admitted to something I didn't do?" she asked. Her voice was calm, but tired. The bully shrugged. "People lie all the time, especially when they get caught." That word, caught, made her chest tighten. She shook her head. "I wasn't caught doing anything," she said. "You just assumed." The bully rolled their eyes. "I assumed because I've seen it happen," they replied. "And because things like this don't add up." "What doesn't add up?" the girl asked. The bully gestured at the car. "This, you, the whole picture." The girl felt a sting behind her eyes, but she blinked it away. "You don't know anything about me," she said quietly. "That's exactly my point," the bully replied. "And neither do the cops. But they will." A couple standing nearby whispered to each other. An older man frowned, clearly uncomfortable, but said nothing. A woman with shopping bags glanced at the girl with concern, then quickly looked away. The girl noticed every reaction, every look. Silence felt louder than shouting. She checked her phone again. No new messages yet. She told herself to stay patient. She had done nothing wrong. Still, her heart wouldn't slow down. "You seem nervous," the bully said, smirking. "That's usually a sign." "I'm nervous because someone is accusing me of a crime I didn't commit," the girl replied. "Anyone would be." The bully laughed softly. "Sure, that's what they all say. The girl turned her face slightly, looking away. She focused on the ground, on the cracks in the pavement, on anything that wasn't the bully's voice. She reminded herself to breathe in through her nose, out through her mouth. Slow, steady. A police siren sounded faintly in the distance. The bully's head snapped up. "Hear that?" they said. "That's for you." The girl closed her eyes for a second. When she opened them, her expression was controlled, but there was fear there too. Not fear of being guilty, but fear of being misunderstood. The siren grew louder, then quieter again as the patrol car turned into the lot. A few people stepped aside to make room. The car rolled to a stop not far from where they stood. The bully straightened immediately, their posture confident. They waved a hand toward the officers as they stepped out of the vehicle. "Over here," the bully called. The girl stayed where she was. Her hands were visible at her sides, her phone still in one hand. She had seen enough stories to know how important small details could become. One of the officers approached first, calm and professional. "What seems to be the problem?" they asked. The bully didn't hesitate. "I saw her trying to steal that car," they said, pointing directly at the girl. "She was acting suspicious, and when I asked her about it, she couldn't explain herself." The girl felt her stomach drop. That wasn't what happened at all. She looked at the officer, then spoke. "That's not true," she said. "It's my family's car. I have the keys." The officer nodded slightly, listening. "All right," they said. "Let's slow this down. I'll hear from both of you." The bully crossed their arms again. "She's lying," they said firmly. "I see stuff like this all the time." The officer turned to the girl. "Can you tell me what happened from your point of view?" She took a breath before speaking. "I came out, walked to the car, unlocked it with my keys. Then they started questioning me. I asked them to leave me alone, but they called the police anyway." The officer glanced at the keys in her hand. "Those your keys?" "Yes," she replied. "They unlock the car." "That doesn't prove ownership," the bully interrupted. "Anyone could have stolen the keys." The officer raised a hand slightly. "I'll ask the questions," they said calmly. The bully stepped back but looked annoyed. The officer turned back to the girl. "Do you have any identification with you?" "Yes," she said. She slowly reached into her bag and handed it over, careful with every movement. The officer checked it, nodding. "Is the car registered to you?" the officer asked. "It's registered to my father," she said. "He's on his way here now." The bully laughed out loud. "Of course he is," they said. "That's convenient." The officer shot them a look. "That's enough," they said. "Let her finish." The girl continued, her voice steadier now. "He told me to wait. He'll be here soon." The officer nodded again. "All right, we can wait." The bully's confidence didn't fade. If anything, it grew. "You're really going to wait?" they asked. "What if she runs?" "She hasn't tried to," the officer replied. "And she's cooperating." The bully scoffed and stepped aside, muttering under their breath. "Unbelievable." The second officer walked around the car, checking the license plate. The girl watched anxiously, her heart pounding. She told herself that facts were facts. Plates matched records. Records told the truth. The officer returned and spoke quietly to the first one. The bully leaned in, trying to listen, but couldn't hear what was said. The first officer turned back to the group. "We're going to wait for the registered owner," they said. "That will clear things up." The bully's smile wavered for just a moment, then returned. "Fine," they said. "I've got nothing but time." The girl stayed silent. She didn't want to say anything that could be twisted. She felt exposed, standing there with eyes on her, judged by strangers who knew nothing about her life. Minutes passed again, slower this time. The bully paced back and forth, occasionally checking their phone. The officers stood calmly, watching both of them. The girl's phone buzzed. A short message appeared on the screen. "On the way." She let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. The bully noticed the change in her expression. "Good news?" they asked sarcastically. She didn't answer. The parking lot felt charged now, like something important was about to happen. The bully still looked confident, but there was a slight tension in their shoulders. The girl leaned back against the car once more, grounding herself. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't be facing it alone. And somewhere nearby, someone who knew the full truth was getting closer with every second. Time moved strangely after that. Seconds felt long, and minutes felt even longer. The girl stayed close to the car, her fingers brushing the cool metal now and then, as if touching it reminded her that this was real and not some bad dream. She kept her eyes forward, not wanting to give the bully any reaction that could be used against her. The bully, however, seemed unable to stay quiet. They paced a few steps, then stopped, then paced again. Every so often, they glanced at the road leading into the parking lot, clearly waiting for something or someone. Each time a car turned in, their head lifted with interest, then dropped when it wasn't what they expected. "So," the bully said after a while, breaking the silence again. "What do you do? School? Work?" The girl didn't answer at first. She looked at one of the officers instead, unsure if she should respond. "You don't have to talk if you don't want to," the officer said calmly. "We're just waiting." The girl nodded, grateful for that reminder. She stayed quiet. The bully smirked. "See? Always quiet when it matters," they said. "That tells me everything I need to know." The girl felt frustration rise in her chest. She had tried being calm. She had tried being polite. Nothing seemed to stop the assumptions. Still, she held her tongue. She knew this moment wasn't about winning an argument. It was about getting through it. A small group of bystanders remained nearby. Some pretended to look at their phones while clearly listening. Others openly watched, curiosity written on their faces. The girl felt exposed, like her whole life was being judged in a parking lot by people who would forget her tomorrow. One of the officers spoke again. "Do either of you need water?" they asked. The girl shook her head. The bully waved the question away. The officer nodded and stepped back. The second officer leaned against the patrol car, relaxed but alert. They both seemed patient, professional, and focused on facts rather than emotions. The girl's phone buzzed again. Another message. Almost there. Her shoulders relaxed slightly. She didn't smile, but there was a quiet sense of relief inside her. She was no longer waiting alone. The bully noticed the phone again. "Let me guess," they said. "Your story is finally showing up." The girl looked up at them for the first time in a while. "It's not a story," she said. Her voice was steady, even firm. "It's my family." The bully raised an eyebrow. "We'll see." The wind picked up a little, moving loose papers across the pavement. Somewhere nearby, someone laughed, unaware of the tension just a few steps away. Life kept moving, even while her world felt paused. A car turned into the lot slowly, driving past the entrance and heading toward their section. The girl noticed it immediately. Her heart skipped. The bully noticed too. They straightened again, watching closely. The car didn't rush. It moved with purpose, careful and controlled. Parked a short distance away, not too close, not too far. The engine turned off. For a moment, no one got out. Then the driver's door opened. The girl recognized the posture before she saw the face. Calm, confident, unhurried. Someone who didn't need to rush to make a point. She felt her throat tighten. Not from fear this time, but from emotion. She took a small step forward without realizing it. The bully squinted, clearly trying to figure out who this person was. Their earlier confidence wavered just a little. The person closed the car door and walked toward them. Each step felt heavy to the girl, but grounding at the same time. She felt steadier with every step that brought him closer. One of the officers noticed and stepped forward. "Sir," the officer said politely, "are you the registered owner of this vehicle?" "Yes," the man replied calmly. His voice was even, controlled and clear. "That's my car." The girl finally let herself breathe fully. The bully let out a short laugh. "Anyone can say that," they said quickly. "Doesn't mean it's true." The man looked at the bully for the first time. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't look angry. He simply looked at them, steady and direct. Of course, he said. That's why I brought proof. He reached into his jacket and calmly handed documents to the officer. Registration, identification, everything neat and ready. The officer reviewed the papers carefully, nodding as they went through them. The second officer joined them, taking a closer look. The bully's smile faded. They shifted their weight from one foot to the other. This doesn't mean she wasn't trying something, they said. People plan these things. The officer looked up. The registration matches the plate, they said. And she has the keys. There's no indication of theft. The bully opened their mouth, then closed it again. So you're just going to believe them? They asked. We're going to believe the evidence, the officer replied. The girl felt a wave of relief rush through her body so strong it made her dizzy. She hadn't realized how tightly she'd been holding herself together. The man turned to her. Are you okay? He asked gently. She nodded, though her eyes were glassy. I think so. The bully crossed their arms again, but this time it looked defensive, not confident. I was just trying to help, they said. If something looked suspicious, I had a right to call it in. The officer's tone changed slightly, firmer now. Calling in concerns is one thing, they said. Making accusations without cause is another. The bully swallowed. I didn't do anything wrong. The officer looked at them steadily. You reported a crime that didn't occur, they said. We'll need to talk about that. The bystanders murmured softly. Some looked at the bully differently now. Others glanced at the girl with new expressions, a mix of regret and understanding. The girl stayed quiet, standing beside the man now. She felt protected, not because of authority or power, but because someone who knew her truth was standing with her. The officer handed the documents back. Thank you for coming down, they said to the man. That clears things up. The man nodded. I appreciate you handling this professionally. The bully took a step back. Their earlier confidence was gone, replaced by nervous energy. They checked their phone again, though there was nothing to see. The officer turned to them. We're going to step aside and talk, they said. As the officers guided the bully a few steps away, the girl finally allowed herself to lean fully against the car. Her legs felt weak, but her heart felt lighter. She looked around the parking lot again. It was the same place, same cars, same people, but she wasn't the same person who had walked into it earlier. What started as a normal day had turned into something else entirely. And though the hardest part was now behind her, she sensed that this moment would stay with her for a long time. The air felt different now. What had once been tense and heavy slowly shifted into something quieter, but not completely calm. The girl stood beside the car, her arms resting lightly against her sides, watching as the officer spoke with the bully a short distance away. She couldn't hear every word, but she could tell from their body language that the tone had changed. The bully no longer looked sure of themselves. Their shoulders were tight, and they avoided eye contact, nodding quickly as if hoping the conversation would end soon. One officer spoke calmly but firmly, while the other listened, occasionally glancing back toward the girl and her father. The girl watched all of this in silence. Her heart was still beating fast, but not from fear anymore. It was more like the after effect of a storm passing through. Loud, sudden, and then gone, leaving everything a little shaken. Her father stood beside her, close enough that she could feel his presence without him saying a word. That alone brought comfort. He didn't rush her with questions. He didn't demand explanations. He simply stayed there, steady and calm. Do you want to sit for a minute? He asked quietly. She shook her head. I'm okay, she replied. Just tired. I understand, he said softly. Across the lot, the conversation between the bully and the officers continued. At one point, the bully gestured toward the girl, their movements sharp and defensive. One officer raised a hand slightly, signaling for them to lower their voice. The girl noticed a few bystanders slowly drifting away now. The excitement they had gathered for was fading. Some people avoided looking in her direction, while others offered small, awkward smiles before leaving. No one apologized. No one said anything, but their silence felt different now, heavier with understanding. One woman passed by and gave the girl a brief nod. It wasn't much, but it felt genuine. The girl nodded back. The officer nearest to them finally turned and walked back. "Everything is cleared up," they said. "You're free to go." The girl let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. "Thank you," she said. The officer nodded. "I'm sorry this happened to you," they added quietly. "You handled it well." That simple sentence meant more than the officer probably realized. The father thanked the officer too. They shook hands briefly, respectful and calm. Then the officer returned to their partner. The bully remained where they were, still speaking with the other officer. Their voice was lower now. The confidence they had shown earlier was gone. They looked smaller somehow, like the situation had finally caught up with them. The girl watched, not with satisfaction, but with a strange sense of sadness. She hadn't wanted this. She hadn't asked for any of it. She had just wanted to leave and go home. Her father seemed to sense her thoughts. "You didn't do anything wrong," he said gently. "Remember that." "I know," she replied. "It just feels heavy." "That feeling passes," he said. "But the lesson stays." She nodded, though she wasn't sure what the lesson was yet. A moment later, the officers finished speaking with the bully. The bully walked away slowly, avoiding everyone's eyes. They didn't look back. The parking lot felt quiet again, almost too quiet. The girl picked up her bag and opened the car door. Before getting in, she paused and looked around once more. Everything looked the same as before, but she knew it wasn't. Something inside her had shifted. She got into the passenger seat while her father walked around to the driver's side. The door closed with a soft click. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then the car started, and the familiar sound grounded her. As they pulled out of the parking lot, she watched the place disappear behind them. The stores, the people, the space where everything had happened. It all shrank in the distance, but the memory stayed clear. "I've heard stories like this," she said quietly. "I just never thought it would happen to me." Her father nodded. "Most people don't," he said, "until it does." They drove in silence for a while. The road stretched ahead, smooth and ordinary, a sharp contrast to what she had just experienced. "I kept thinking someone would speak up," she said after a moment. "Someone watching." He sighed softly. "Sometimes people freeze. Sometimes they don't want to get involved. That doesn't make what happened right." "I know," she said. "It just hurt." He glanced at her briefly. "It's okay to admit that." She leaned back in her seat, staring out the window. Cars passed by. Trees blurred together. Life went on as if nothing had happened. "But I'm proud of you," he added. "You stayed calm. You told the truth. You didn't let fear control you." She smiled faintly. "I didn't feel brave." "Bravery doesn't always feel like courage," he said. "Sometimes it just feels like surviving the moment." They stopped at a red light. She watched the signal change, red to green, and felt something ease inside her chest. "Will they get in trouble?" she asked, thinking of the bully. "That's up to the officers," he replied. "But what matters most is that you're safe." She nodded. Safety. That word meant more to her now than it had before. As they continued driving, she replayed the scene in her mind. The accusation, the stairs, the waiting, the relief when her father arrived. Each moment felt sharp and clear, like it had been carved into her memory. She knew she wouldn't forget it anytime soon, but she also knew something else. She had faced it. She had stood there alone at first and made it through. And while the world outside looked the same as always, she felt a quiet strength growing inside her, one she hadn't noticed before. Whatever came next, she knew she wouldn't face it the same way again. That night, sleep didn't come easily. The girl lay in her room, staring at the ceiling, listening to the quiet sounds of the house. Every time she closed her eyes, the parking lot came back. The voices, the looks, the feeling of standing alone while people watched. She turned onto her side and pulled the blanket closer, trying to calm her thoughts. In the morning, she woke up tired but determined. Life didn't pause just because something painful had happened. She got ready, moved through her routine, and stepped outside. The world looked the same, but she felt different inside. A little more aware. A little more guarded. Later that day, she stopped at a small cafe near her neighborhood. It was a place she liked because it felt familiar and calm. She ordered a drink and sat near the window watching people pass by. For a moment, she felt almost normal again. Then she noticed the looks. Not everyone stared, but a few people glanced at her a second too long. It reminded her of the parking lot. Her shoulders tightened, and her heart picked up speed. She told herself she was safe. Nothing was happening. Still, the memory lingered. Her phone buzzed with a message from a friend asking how she was doing. She hesitated, then typed back honestly, "Better. Still thinking about it." The reply came quickly. "You didn't deserve that. None of it." Those words mattered. As she sat there, she overheard two people nearby talking about something they had seen online. A short clip. A story going around. Someone mentioned a situation where police were called on a young black girl over a car that wasn't stolen at all. Her stomach dropped. She listened quietly, realizing they were talking about her. Someone nearby had recorded part of the incident. Not the whole thing. Just the accusation. Just the moment that made her look guilty before the truth came out. The clip had spread faster than she ever imagined. She finished her drink slowly and left the cafe, her mind racing. By the time she got home, her phone was buzzing nonstop. Messages, notifications, missed calls. Her father was already aware. He sat at the table, his expression calm but serious. "We'll handle this," he said. "Together." She nodded, though fear crept in again. Being accused in a parking lot was one thing. Being talked about by strangers online was another. Over the next few days, the story continued to spread. Some people defended her, pointing out how wrong the accusation was. Others questioned her without knowing any facts. The noise was overwhelming. She stayed off social media as much as she could, but it was impossible to avoid completely. Screenshots were sent to her. Comments were quoted. She saw words that hurt, written by people who had never met her. At the same time, messages of support came in too. Strangers shared similar experiences. They thanked her for standing strong, even without knowing she would become part of a bigger conversation. She didn't feel strong. She felt tired. One afternoon, she and her father sat together on the porch. The air was warm, and the street was quiet. "I keep thinking about what I could have done differently," she said. "Maybe if I spoke louder. Maybe if I left sooner." He shook his head gently. "You didn't cause this," he said. "Someone else's assumptions did." She nodded slowly. "What matters now," he continued, "is how you move forward." She thought about that for a long time. A few days later, she agreed to speak with a local reporter. Not to argue. Not to attack anyone. Just to tell the full story. Her story. She sat across from the reporter, hands folded, voice calm. She explained how the day started, how quickly it changed, how it felt to be judged without being known. "I wasn't angry," she said. "I was scared, and confused, and tired of being assumed guilty before I even spoke." The reporter listened carefully. When the piece came out, it felt different from the clips online. It showed context. It showed her humanity. People began to see more than a moment. They saw a person. Messages continued to come in, but now many were thoughtful. Parents. Young people. Even some who admitted they had judged too quickly. One message stood out. Simply said, "Thank you for reminding us to slow down before we assume." She read it twice. The attention didn't erase what happened, but it softened its edges. It helped her feel less alone. One evening, as the sun set, she went for a walk. She moved through her neighborhood, breathing in the familiar air. A neighbor waved. A dog barked in the distance. Normal life, slowly returning. She stopped for a moment and looked up at the sky, thinking about how quickly a normal day could change, and how quickly it could also begin again. She knew there would always be people who judged first, but she also knew now that her voice mattered. What happened to her wasn't just a bad moment. It became a turning point, and even though she hadn't chosen this path, she was walking it with more confidence than before. The story wasn't over yet, but she was no longer afraid of what came next. The days that followed felt calmer, but not empty. The girl returned to her routine slowly, choosing familiar places and familiar faces. She took her time, letting her confidence rebuild in small steps. Each morning, she reminded herself that what happened did not define who she was. It was something that happened to her, not something she became. She went back to the parking lot once, not because she had to, but because she wanted to. It was quiet that afternoon. Cars came and went. People walked past without noticing her. She stood there for a moment, breathing in the air, letting the memory pass through without stopping her. Then she smiled softly and walked away. At home, conversations became easier. She laughed more. She slept better. The fear that once followed her into quiet moments slowly lost its grip. It didn't disappear all at once, but it no longer controlled her thoughts. One evening, she sat at the kitchen table with her father, sharing a simple meal. The house felt warm and safe. "I've been thinking," she said, "about how fast people judge, and how slow they are to listen." He nodded. "Listening takes effort," he said. "Judging doesn't." She thought about that. Later that week, she was invited to speak at a small community gathering. Nothing formal, just a room of people who wanted to understand each other better. She almost said no. Standing in front of strangers still made her nervous. But then she remembered how alone she felt that day, and how much it would have meant if even one person had spoken up. So she went. She stood at the front of the room, hands clasped together, heart beating fast. She didn't use big words. She didn't tell people what to think. She simply shared what it felt like to be questioned, watched, and doubted for no real reason. "I wasn't angry," she said. "I was scared. I kept wondering what I did wrong, even though I knew I hadn't done anything." The room was quiet. "I don't want sympathy," she continued. "I just want people to pause before they assume, to ask questions with kindness instead of suspicion." When she finished, people clapped softly. A few wiped their eyes. Afterward, several came up to thank her. One older woman held her hand and said, "I'm sorry no one stood beside you that day." Those words stayed with her. Life didn't suddenly become perfect. There were still moments when she felt watched. Still times when a stranger's look made her heart beat faster. But now she had tools she didn't have before. Confidence, awareness, and a voice she trusted. She learned to speak up sooner, not with anger, but with clarity. She learned to trust her instincts without letting fear guide her decisions. One afternoon, while driving with her father, she noticed someone staring at her car again. Her chest tightened for just a second. Then she took a breath and reminded herself that she belonged exactly where she was. She drove on. Months passed. The story faded from the news. New stories replaced it. But the impact didn't fade for her. It shaped how she moved through the world, how she treated others, and how she expected to be treated. She became more observant. When she saw someone being questioned unfairly or spoken to harshly, she paid attention. Sometimes she spoke up. Sometimes she simply stood nearby, offering quiet support. She knew now how much that presence could matter. One day, a young girl approached her after a community event. "I saw what happened to you," the girl said softly. "It made me feel less alone." The girl smiled and knelt down slightly to meet her eyes. "You're not alone," she said, "and you never have to feel small." That moment meant more than any headline ever could. At home that night, she stood in front of the mirror, looking at herself with new understanding. She saw strength where she once saw uncertainty. She saw courage where she once felt fear. She wasn't defined by the accusation. She was defined by how she carried herself afterward. The world outside still had work to do. She knew that. But she also knew that change often started quietly, in moments like hers, shared honestly and listened to deeply. As she turned off the light and prepared for sleep, she felt peaceful. Not because everything was fixed, but because she trusted herself. That day in the parking lot had tried to take something from her. Failed. Instead, it gave her clarity, strength, and a deeper sense of who she was. And wherever life took her next, She would walk forward knowing she belonged, without question.